Hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Cremando for YogaUOnline, and I'm here with yoga therapist and yoga teacher Olga Kabel. Educated as a school teacher, Olga's been a yoga teacher for over 20 years and a certified yoga therapist for 13 of those. She's completed multiple teacher training programs over the course of her career, but what's resonated most with her is the lineage of Krishnamacharya, his son Desikachar, and via that lineage, her teacher, Gary Kraftsow of the American Viniyoga Institute. You may recognize Olga as the founder and managing editor of the very popular Sequence Whiz program. It's an electronic health record system and yoga sequence builder for yoga teachers and therapists. And it does all the stick figures for you, which is what I like. On her Sequence Whiz website, you'll also find over 500 articles on various topics, all things yoga and wellness. Olga strongly believes in the healing power of yoga on every level, physical, psychological, and spiritual. But in that mix, there is an aspect of yoga practice that I think doesn't get enough attention, and that's something you've been focused on, Olga, and that is how yoga can affect and how we can moderate our energy via our yoga practice. So that's something I really want to pick your brain about. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here. Thanks, Lynn, for this wonderful introduction.
You're so welcome. So it's not unusual to come out of a yoga class or come off the mat from yoga practice feeling really energized and thinking, oh, that was so energizing. And yoga can do that. So we can feel that, but I'm not sure we always focus on, first of all, the scope of yoga tools that we have to moderate energy. And secondly, how much we need to moderate our energy. And lastly, how we can put those two things together. But this is something you've been doing a lot of work on. So can you talk a little bit about your notion of energy balancing?
Sure, I would love to. Energy to me is such a fascinating topic because this is something that we are experiencing constantly, right? So, and the way we experience energy, it's not just whether our energy is high or low, it's also whether the quality of energy is pleasant or unpleasant. So, in scientific circles, they call it affect, which is basically your sense at any given moment of the combination of balance, pleasant or unpleasant, and arousal, high or low arousal. So this is the fundamental aspect of our consciousness, just like loudness or brightness, for example. It never goes away. It's always with us, even when we're in complete stillness or when we're asleep. So this is how we're experiencing both our internal environment, but also it affects how we perceive the world. So the question then becomes, do we have any control, right? Any way to affect how we feel energetically from moment to moment? This is a fascinating topic for me because it combines so many different aspects. It's about our nervous system. It's about our physiology in general. It's about our minds and how we perceive the world. All of this is kind of combined together. And it all is connected to the idea of interoception, or basically how we perceive our internal environment. And that interoception, it's both conscious and unconscious, right? So we can consciously feel certain aspects of our physiological state, the speed of our heartbeat, or our body temperature, or the state of our digestion, for example. But a lot of that takes place underneath our conscious awareness. This is how our brain is constantly trying to juggle the state of our physiology to achieve the state of balance, so that we are constantly in a state of homeostasis or as close to it as we can get. So this is a continuous balancing act that's happening underneath our conscious awareness, and we just getting the sort of the outcome of it. We're not aware of every little thing that happens, but as a result of what the brain decided is happening, of how balanced we are internally, as a result of that, we feel how we feel energetically. We feel energized and alert, or we feel jittery and anxious, or we feel calm and sort of serene, or we feel lethargic and depressed. So all of those things fundamentally depend on the state of our physiology and how our brain interpreted it. But the most fascinating thing to me is that our physiological state is directly affected by every little thing that happens in the course of our day, right? This is also sort of connected to what I think of as 3 pillars of energetic balance. And is that something that you would like
Yeah, let's hear
to
about that. I think that sounds really interesting.
So I believe that the 3 pillars of energetic balance are interoception, as I already mentioned, the sort of brain's assessment of what's happening with our physiology. Then there's, of course, sleep. We all know how important sleep is. And if you didn't have enough good quality sleep, you wake up crabby, and it affects your perception of your entire day. And then there's stress management, which is also a very interesting topic, because we all know that stress is just simply a part of life. It's a reflection of any change that happens in your environment. It's inevitable, and our systems are designed to handle it. But the problem, of course, becomes when we have stress levels that are too high for too long, and that, of course, impacts our system. But all of these factors, stress, sleep, and interoception, they're all intimately linked and intertwined, and they're play off of each other. And as a result, we feel how we feel from moment to moment. And that sense, that quality and level of arousal, those qualities of our energetic state, they kind of fluctuate constantly throughout the day. Some of those fluctuations are big, some of them are small, and sometimes what ends up happening, you were having a good day and everything was looking up, but then something happens and it switches, and all of a sudden you begin to spiral downwards, and now only everything that happens, you're perceiving it as this sort of downward energetic spiral. So then the question is, how do we catch ourselves? How do we stop that downward spiral? Is there anything we can do both in our daily lives and in our yoga practice where we can stop that spiral, assess our current energetic / physiological state, and what is it that we can do to direct it more consciously? So this is what
I
I
think
find
it's
fascinating.
interesting that 2 of your pillars, stress and sleep, are both considered epidemic uh, disorders at the moment. We might include in that things, sort of malaises that are somewhat epidemic, especially in older people, is loneliness. And I think this really speaks to what you're talking about, is how you perceive your felt sense of how you are in the world. And I don't know if everyone uh, thinks in those terms, that they have a choice. There's a condition, I like to call it, sort of, because when we think of energy management, almost, I think for most people, we think, yes, how can I get more energy? But there's lots of people walking around with what I like to call a fast idle, who really could use a little bit less energy at given moments. And so what you're really talking about is a form of self-care, almost, where you are empowering yourself almost to be on a more, what, let me use a yoga term, equanimous equanimity, that we're looking for more, or sattva or sukha, if we can use any of those yogi words. So how do we do that?
Yes. And one thing that I wanted to kind of pause at for a moment is something that you said, is that generally we think about trying to kind of bring our energy up because presumably our energy is low. However, that low energy can be both pleasant or unpleasant. When we have low arousal, we can either feel depressed or lethargic, or we can feel calm and serene, because calmness and serenity are also low arousal state, but they're more in the pleasant sort of category. And the same with high energy. We think, okay, let's gear ourselves up for something. That's great, but high energy can be alert, um, excited, or it can be agitated and jittery. So these are, again, it's the pleasant versus unpleasant balance. So, and we are generally are somewhere in between on that spectrum, between high-low arousal and pleasant and unpleasant sort of state. Then they sometimes call it an affective circumplex. It's like this circle, and at any given moment of time, we're somewhere in that circle, and it changes, of course. We move around that circle in a haphazard way, but by using yogic techniques, we can actually make it more intentional and more directional, so that there's specific strategies that we can choose that will help us move from wherever we are in that circle toward more higher, for example, if we need higher energy, or lower if we need to calm down from the agitated state, and in general in the direction of feeling more pleasant, or having that feeling of satisfaction and overall pleasantness in enjoyable type of state. So in yoga, we have very specific strategies for dealing with those types of things, with those particular energetic state, and specific strategies that help you both unwind and purge, access energy that is of sort of agitated quality. And we have specific strategies that allow you to energize your system and create that sort of uplifting. They build you up. And sometimes those strategies are really, really simple. We don't need, they're not complicated, but they apply to our breath, to what we do with asana, to what we do with sound, to what we do with pacing, and those types of things. And in yoga, there is a very specific model that describes in detail all those different strategies that we can use when we need to build our system up, or we need to purge and unwind.
So what's interesting about what you're saying to me is, as you were talking, it's occurring to me that you can think about energy in and energy out. And what you want is a balance of energy in and energy out. So if you're that low energy person and you're in a depressed mood and you're at low tide, versus someone sitting in stillness, you have one person who's not using a lot of energy and is fairly sort of calm and serene, and you have another person who's using a lot of energy just to get through their day. The energy in and energy out not balanced. So in that other example of someone who's at really a frenetic high pace is using a lot of energy, versus someone who's just on a high because they're running and they've gotten their rhythm and they're not thinking about it and they're breathing easily, but they're at a high energy. That there isn't necessarily that just because you're high energy that you're making an efficient use of. So I think what you're talking about is efficiency and quality and creating a day, your 24 hours, where for the most part you're in a box that is the acceptable level. Does that sound?
I think
right?
what we're talking here about is intentionality, right? And I think that there's actually two sides of it. One is being able to identify the kind of energetic state that we're in, because that's very, very important. If you're unaware, there's nothing you can do about it, right? So being able to catch ourselves, to drop our attention inward, to understand what kind of state we're in currently, energetic state, and then make a conscious choice, knowing where you want to go and how to get there, what kind of strategies will get you there. So I think that's a very important idea. And interoception is something that we really, really want to cultivate, our ability to drop our attention inward and sense it, sense the quality of our energy currently, our current energetic state. And the more we do that, the more layered it becomes, the deeper we begin to understand it, or sense it rather. I don't know if it's really logical understanding, but sensing it. And the better you understand it, the more likely you are to affect it, to be able to affect it.
Mhm.
Um, so then the strategies, the yogic strategies that you use become much more effective because you know what your starting point is and where you want to end up. And that's one of the things that we're constantly trying to cultivate in ourselves and our students, of course, as well. That's why we usually begin our classes with, let's close your eyes, bring your attention inward. Let's take a few breaths here, get a sense of how you feel. One of the techniques that I love to use with my students, especially when we're working with energy, I would ask them to close their eyes, take a few breaths, tune in to how they feel inside, and with their eyes closed, try to use their hand gesture to show me how their energy feels right now. And I tell you, I've seen it all, this and this and this and that, all sorts of things. But it kind of serves two purposes. Is one, it gives me a sense of where they are, because people will show you up high or low or like this, or whatever they're experiencing. So you get an idea, okay, what you're working with in the class environment. But also for themselves, because now they're really diving in deep and they're trying to express it, like really process their experience and kind of translate it for you. And this is such an important aspect of sort of interoceptive awareness. And then, of course, at the end of the class, we revisit again. Did it change? Do you feel any different now than you did at the beginning of the practice? What is the quality of your energy now? And more often than not, it will be very different. Sometimes not necessarily high or low, but usually in the quality. If at the beginning you see a lot of this sort of zigzagging, at the end you will see a lot of this. So it becomes their inner awareness of their energy becomes much more smooth and soft and sort of flowy. And kind of this is something that we work toward.
No. I think that's a really important distinction because when you're talking about energy, all low energy isn't good and all high energy isn't bad. All there to take the value judgment off the energy and just describe the energy, I think is in itself empowering, because someone who's feeling very low energy has made a decision about themselves that day. And what you're saying is, well, you have a choice, where is it now? Oh, it's here. I love to see the class, by the way, where one person is here and the next person at the next table is
That
there.
happens all the time, and that's a challenge.
I love it if at the end they're both going, oh.
That's right. That's our goal as teachers. We're trying to get there.
But I think taking the good word and the bad word away and just talk about quality and experience is so empowering and so important. Now, you are going to be teaching a course for us, a 3-part course where you're really going to tackle this idea about creating an energy makeover. and how yoga can help us to really create more vitality. But I just still want to say, I don't think creating more vitality means more high energy. I think it means more vital, useful energy. So talk about your course and what you'll be covering. I'm sure you'll be going much more deeply into what we've been talking about, but what else will you be talking about?
So yes, in the course, we'll be talking about the three pillars of energetic balance, of course, to kind of form a foundation upon which we want to build our energy castle. And then we will be talking about this idea of body budgeting, right? Because it's connected to interoception. So your brain is constantly trying to, if you expend a lot of energy, it needs to be replenished. This is how your brain works, right? So it's this constant sort of budgeting that's happening internally. And if your budget gets really, really low, then you feel depleted. If your budget gets really high, you feel agitated. So you can have either too much within your system or too little within the system. And we'll be talking about what that means from the standpoint of our nervous system and what it means. What can we do about it, basically? And we will be discussing specific yogic strategies that you can use both in your daily life and on the yoga mat for yourself and for your students, where you can become a little bit more intentional in how you direct that energy in toward where you want it to go.
Where you want it to go, which is not necessarily.
That's right. It's more from the perspective of getting rid of stuff you don't want in your system when it's too much of something, or building it up when it's feeling depleted. And we're taking judgment out of it. Neither is good or bad. It all depends on kind of where you want to be. At sometimes, for example, you need to really build your energy up because you have a challenge that you need to rise up to, and that's appropriate. At other times, you really need to calm your system down. Like, for example, before sleep, you really don't want to, yank your system up too high before sleep. You won't be able to sleep. So you need to be able to purge and unwind at the end of your day. So it all depends sort of on what you need and what are you doing, where are you going, and things like that. Yeah. And as part of the course, we'll also have two yoga practices.
You
I'm
practice
calling them, one is rise and shine, and another one is relax and unwind. And in those practices, we will be using these specific strategies that I describe in the course. And I also provide an analysis of each one of those practices so that you can see what we're doing and why we're doing it. And
which
that's
tools
separate.
will address which issues and create
Exactly. What strategy are we using here? How we're gradually building it up? What we're doing with the breath? Why are we picking those poses? All those types of things. Because every choice matters. When you're working with energy, things are super, super subtle and very, very delicate. So we have to be very strategic and kind of layer the elements on top of each other and be very mindful about the choices that we make. Just because the subject matter is so subtle. We're working with our physiology here. That's tricky, not obvious. So it takes layers. That's why I'm taking time to really analyze those practices so that you could see how we can build them and use it in your own.
So you could adapt for your own
Exactly.
day, and you could take a little piece of it into your day with you, because I think when you're talking about energy management, it's nice to be on the mat, but really you want to be balancing your energy when you're off the mat as well.
Absolutely. And a lot of it has to do with breathing, right? And that you can do wherever you are, whenever, but doing not just even specific breathing techniques, even though we have that too, but what do you do with the different parts of your breath, and how you do it proportionally is very, very important. So those are the types of things that you can do, anytime, really, in the course of your day. wherever.
Like a very energizing class. Looking forward to it, and thank you so much for sharing clearly something you feel very energized about. You're a wonderful speaker on energy, so thank you so much, Olga. We will see you in class. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you in class as well. Bye bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to it.